This is a bit of an idea cafe, or maybe not. I just used that graphic where this is a continuation from last week where we were talking about having a project that actually pays the bills, both for our projects, it can fund new projects, and actually gives us a living wage or whoever's working on it a living wage. And I did reach out to Raymond and he didn't really respond. So I don't know whether it's just stuff going on or what's up with that, but he's not here. So on our own for that at the moment. But I'm sure we can figure out. Maybe we do it like an idea cafe. We can each take a turn to share and offer ideas on what we think would be the most income generating, easiest solution we have yet to talk about or have already talked about.
Yeah, I guess I haven't thought that much about income raising. I mean, I know we talked about it last time, but it's always, for me, it's always still kind of incidental um, for doing what I want to do, and then still, how can we make it sustainable? But Agel's had some ideas on things that are specifically profitable, and I've gotten a lot of interest on the rating system. Still, I guess I haven't figured out who would want to pay for it, but so maybe that doesn't apply. But every time I talk to someone, they're like, "Oh yeah, I could use that for X." So I guess I don't have that much, except I would like to find a sustainable way to work on these projects full time.
Like the stepping forward, stepping backwards. We all muted and Bentley was off mute, so he had to share first. A little bit of chicken. How to make money. I mean, I'm kind of obsessed with not making money. Kind of like the anti-money person. I'm like, you want to pay me for that? That's gonna make it less fun. But I also really want to be able to support ourselves and other people who are coming into this space. And I definitely want to be able to support the projects. I mean, that's where I'm focused on creating things from the ground up so everyone can put in a little bit of money, and that's a very powerful amount. Income generating ones to me are the ones that sell on the site, right? So like the labor platform where a tiny percentage is going to the pool, something that does solve a problem, and hopefully in a cooperative way that is game B, because then even if there's already a saturated marketplace, there's the incentive. Oh, I can't think of the word it is. The like niche of the market is like we're doing it better because you can be involved and you can see it and it's transparent. And I think most people, but still game A, right? Still marketed, still beautiful, still functional, still working, so that it's still going out to people, right? If we created our own TaskRabbit or whatever, then making sure that people know this one exists so that they can come to this one and what makes us different. We're working together to make sure our workers get paid, and you have, that we can coordinate it so you are paying the least amount as the payer, and rating systems and everything that makes sense. And then there's a few ones like that. At one point I wanted to make a like global online credit union, because like a financial industry thing that's way too big though. Like, I can't even figure out to get 10,000 people in a $100,000 project, and a credit union would be like a millions dollar project. But there's a lot of money in financial endeavors and doing them in a game B way, possibly doing something like a micro loan or a loan, something that is a pool of money and we all decide where it goes to fund the next project. But again, we need a large number of people, or we all need to already be rich. Win the lottery. That's my last contribution. Adrian?
All right. Yeah, I kind of waited because I've obviously got opinions on this. So I think it sounds like the main thing that this is about is where do we start? Because there's a bunch of options, and I've even got ideas, that I think could still be good, but they require kind of a more significant time and resource investment that would be easier if we already had something making money. So it's the whole, like, it takes money to make money thing. So, to me, I think the easiest starting point is still a Salesforce app, just because it's not sort of a from scratch project and you've got a built-in, possible customer base. Open to other ideas as well, but to me, that sort of seems like the easiest next step. I I'm not sure how much we want to talk about just the individual things that could make money. One of the questions I have is sort of, if tomorrow we could snap our fingers and have a project making some money, part of the question then becomes, how do we spend it? Like, what part of it goes towards staff costs? And then, if, let's say, okay, we've got 2 or 3 people employed, but then we've got some money left over, and what does Reason Score get? What does WikiLection get? How do we bring on new projects and decide what they get? Sort of, how does that work? And I think that's an important part of, if one of the differentiators of this platform is, if we actually get to something like a TaskRabbit, where that's a part of it, is we're offering a service and we take a small cut. I think that's a part of how we explain it is, okay, here's how that money is being spent. But then when it comes to the projects, here's how those choices are made. Here's what projects we're funding. Here's what those projects have to be like. Here's what they can't be like. That kind of thing. And then I think one of the other questions I have is, if we're talking about, this is really starting to compete in Game A with sort of some Game B bits and pieces. Part of it is, how Game A are we? How Game B are we? How do we move that needle? And then in the interim, how do we compete with Game A companies for both customers and for talent? Like, if there's a role that, if you were like the kind of person that we'd want to fill that role, but you could go work for, for Google or a big company and be making well into 6 figures. And the initial sort of thing that we had said last time was, sort of like paying people a decent wage, but also kind of trying to cap the top end. Are we saying everyone makes the same, or are we just saying that they don't make the same, but there's like a lower multiple where, even the CEO shouldn't be making 30 times what staff do, or, into the hundreds of times if we're talking about what the lowest paid person gets versus the CEO. Those are sort of the things that come to mind when I think about how this whole thing works, which I think might be outside of the topic of what we said this was, which I think the topic was just sort of, how do we make money? But I think part of that goes into, how do we market, or how do we position this organization? And a lot of it comes to answering those questions, I think.
So yeah, I think governance, like how to spin that once you get it, is pretty big. I guess we have some kind of ideas, is that it's not going to be, the first couple people that create it take home all the cash and stuff. And then, yeah, so that, I think that will be a whole nother topic that we have to figure out. Also, just something else on starting, a lot of the kind of the in startups, for the rest of us, they suggest a stair-step approach. So start with something simple, especially if you've never started a business before, even with like some sort of content or educational material, where you can just write up a PDF and sell it. So you do some research and figure out what people want to know. You sell that. And then, progressively make it bigger, which, of course, one of those bigger things is making a plugin, like Adriel mentioned, for Salesforce or something similar, WordPress. And then you can step up to creating, actual apps and SaaS offerings. So that's just an idea. I don't know that we need to start smaller than the Salesforce plugins. And I guess also it might be good to have some place to like throw down ideas, or even ideas from other people in Game B. Just a spreadsheet somewhere might be a good idea. Yeah, and then think through which ones could we better serve that would have an edge being from Game B. Either it's cheaper because you're not being extractive, or it just operates substantially more efficiently. Someone mentioned to me in another meeting that on that thing where you can rate companies, that a lot of companies have a vested interest to make sure that you can't directly compare their products to someone else, which also means we'd have to figure out lawsuits and stuff like that, but or legal protection. But I hadn't really thought about it. Now that's kind of a Game A problem, right? Um, so any area where a game A company couldn't enter or is a place that's not entered because their game A principles don't allow them to. Might if there's if one of those ideas kind of fits that, then that would be optimal.
Also, I don't know how legal it is. I haven't looked into it, but one of the other beautiful things that we have going for us is we are a global community. And so if something isn't legal in the States, but it's still ethical because we're Game B people, then having that come out of Canada or Australia or Europe so that it is legal there, right? Like if you can compare products in Europe and you're allowed to enter products in the United States, because that's what it's part of, right? That like you just need to take a picture to enter a product, and that would be anyway. Yeah, we a global community can have workarounds for legality because that's what the big corporations do, right? It's just you can see us doing it, or we're the people getting together and doing it, and we're doing it ethically, right? Like there's no ethical reason not to be able to do that. That's all game A legal, but you'll hurt our bottom line. They'll see it causes cancer. I worked really hard on this.
I think to Bentley's point, one of the early things will definitely be starting to get some sort of legal clout. Because I fully expect, like, if we actually, like, for something like a Salesforce app, that wouldn't matter. But once we actually start, like, comparing companies, and even things like having, like, for WikiLection, for example, having profiles online of people can get murky when it comes to things like GDPR and that sort of thing, where I imagine that they'll be fighting even harder against it because they don't want their profile online. They don't want a permanent sort of, their permanent record online. They want to, that's fine to track it for citizens, but for us, well, wait, hold on. We don't want that. So yeah, I do think that and that's probably a good example of, so if we're talking about like maybe something like customer support, we would probably have them, like, in most companies, that's one of the lower paid roles. So we'd want to be able to decide what's the lowest pay that we're willing to go. So sort of how high is that? And then you get into something like, well, okay, if we say that, let's just say, for example, that's 80,000. Okay, but then what do company lawyers make? Because paying a lawyer 80,000 is almost the same as nothing as far as they're concerned in most cases, because they.
I have an idea, and I don't know if it would be a Salesforce one though, but you're the Salesforce person. So marketing is one of the big game A things. It's one of people spend, like the company spends a lot of marketing to accrue a customer, and this is like Salesforce's whole business. Is why it might not be a Salesforce thing, but to be able to even offer that to game A businesses, right, as game A as they are, to be like, you want to find your right customer, right? Like the person who's going to be able to find you. How much does it cost right now to get a customer? We don't yet, but we have a customer base of people who tell us their values, tell us what they're looking for, and we're telling them the best option, right? We're doing it in game B way. This solves both of your problem, right? This is omni-win. They're looking for you and you're looking for them. We're working really for the customer, the member, but getting paid by connecting them to the business that is best, right? So if they pay $5 per accrual, we're like, hey, you're going to pay us $4.50, right? Or like something. So they're having a savings, our person's happy, and we're getting paid. Is that anything?
You have to be careful with that because that's often where things tend to go wrong. It's because then you have an incentive, and I don't say that's a reason not to do it, but you have an incentive to push people towards the companies that will pay you. If it's an open service, not every company will. Now, there are like affiliate programs to where, like an Amazon or whatever. So taking advantage of those that are already out there would be good. But I have to figure out transparency and how to make sure that at no time or is anything being. Which, if it's fully transparent, then it'd be obvious if you mucked with it. So yeah, I'm not sure I could think of a way outside of just taking advantage of what already is in Game A that wouldn't cause perverse incentives.
Yeah, and there are a few services like that already that I think, to Bentley's point, you can sort of see they started out well-intentioned and just, probably just somebody's project up the side of their desk trying to, compare companies. And then pretty quickly it got into, oh, this is actually a really lucrative basket of information that they can sell. And then it, got to like allowing companies to pay to improve their ranking and that sort of thing. I think if you had almost like embedded in just how it works that you couldn't do that, I'm not sure what that would look like. There's definitely advantages, but it would be hard. A, there's a lot of people in that space, and B, it would be, pretty easy to go. Yeah, go ahead.
There might be someone who already does this, but my current rabbit hole is MLMs, which is of course they have people who are like cult-like passionate about the project, selling it to people who are like the last people you should trust. But anyway, then a lot of influencer marketers, right, who get paid to try a product. A lot of times they do really like it, but they're getting paid to do it. To be able to have a third party where the company itself, right, the makeup company, preview company, whatever it is, I don't care how ethical it is, I do, but I don't. That they're saying we want 100 people to try this, and we're the third party in between to say, okay, we're going to give it to these people. We're going to give an honest review, right? These are the makeup influencers, and they give an honest review. And so their reputation, the influencer's reputation, is like that they do it honestly and they're not necessarily getting paid from the company itself. And then you can actually trust it much more. And so there's that built into it. But the issue would be, right, you're giving it to 10 influencers in that case, or 100 random people to try it, to say whether or not they like it. And they're paying for that, right? They're paying to say, yes, this is third party. These people like it.
Yeah, another option might be just to allow to have paid sponsorship, so they just get displayed as blank is sponsoring this. And of course, sponsoring a Game B project would be pro Game B. I mean, that would be something people would like, so they might get that feature on the system. So if you're searching, I want to search for businesses that promote Game B, well then we would be one of the ways that they could do that. So maybe it's less direct than a pay per connection, but that might be a way. Of course, one thing I hadn't thought about too much about all this is how to keep the system from being gamed. I don't know, I talked about that a little bit, but it's just filling my mind. Oh, and I may have to leave early, so if I disappear, just ignore it.
You're on mute, dude.
I was saying if you had the brick wall, you could disappear back into it, but yeah.
Oh.
That's muted, and I think that happened before we went live. Oh. Yeah, I mean, the point of this conversation was just to spark ideas, to say what it was, because it's more of the idea cafe, not the TogetherTec board meeting. But I'm okay with it, of course, however it goes. The third party, someone's watching this, someone needs to take that on. Someone needs to create a way that we can actually trust the durability and comparing them. And because even like the influencers themselves, right, the ones that are doing it well and have the YouTube channels, you don't know that, right? So you don't know whether they're being sponsored or not. And so to have that third party in between to be like, okay, you're the electronics people, so you're getting these electronics, and your job is to give them an honest review, not to do the sponsorship. So like, yeah, having that trust built in. And the electronics one wants people to it's basically free advertising that you pay for once, and then people are going to constantly look up these reviews, but you're going to get honest reviews. So even going through that third party is going to get you credibility, right? That like, oh, we're willing to do it this way instead of the other way.
It would be interesting to see how you could sort of re-envision not even sponsorship, but like the review and sort of like what it is using sponsorships, because they changed the rules on YouTube, and I think it might just be like a US law now, where now like if you're sponsored, you have to say it clearly. And a lot of people have gotten in trouble for not doing that. But I wonder if you could sort of say, and I think this may have been what you were getting at, Jubilee, where like a company contacts this third party, or like a proxy, like where it's a company, and say, hey, you make, I don't know, baby food. So either we just deal with one, or ideally you may even try to reach out, to like 3 or 5 companies and then you get their sample products, they pay the proxy, and then that company arranges with a bunch of influencers to say, hey, here's 3 to 5 kinds of baby food. Do a review on each. You don't know who they are, or or what they're paid, or what they cost, or anything. Just say like, what do you like? And then the proxy knows, here's product A, B, C, D, E. In the end, you can say, hey, here's, we send this to 30 different people. Here's, you can watch the actual videos of each, but then also here's the summary of, if people didn't know what it was, they still picked, this brand half the time.
I don't think game A companies would pay for that. Because there's a difference between my baby food is okay and my baby food is the best. Because it's like, one is just like, does the baby like it, right? The other one's like, wait, is it, if they have these 6 to choose from, do they choose it? Well, if there's 6, you have a 1 in 6 chance, right? Like there's a different incentive than just like,
pricing would definitely change. You wouldn't be able to make as much because with the sponsorship, it's not a true review. Like you probably aren't going to get paid if you try it and you're like, oh, this sucks. Like, and if you did get paid, no one's ever going to use you for a sponsorship again. But if you had like, for example, each of the 6 companies pays 1/6 of what they normally would, it is kind of a gamble. It's saying, hey, put your money where your mouth is. You're saying that your product is decent if you want to be a part of this. And I think to your point, yeah, it would be hard to get companies involved to at least to start with, because it's a new thing. You're saying, hey, spend money, you might get nothing out of this. And I think like you probably want some sort of a limit on the bottom part where like if you've got 5 companies, maybe you only say like the top 2 or 3 and you don't say who the bottom ones are, just so that you aren't like, hey, we paid money for this and we got ranked as the bottom of 6. Yeah, I'm never doing that again. And like other companies might be like, I don't want part of that. But if you just paid money and you got no good out of it, but also no bad, then it might not be as bad. And whereas the company that paid the same as everyone else and got ranked top, they might do quite well. And so that might be enough to say, okay, well, it is a bit of a gamble, but what you get out of it is possibly good enough.
I was thinking it was like the company itself would, let's say, give 100 headsets to us, the third party. We would know which ones to give it to. It would be randomized, and they would go out to 100 different influencers, 100 different electronics ones. They would just give a review on a headset, right? Which is normally what they do. They don't necessarily compare headsets because there's way too many on the market anyway. They might compare it to the last one they tried, or like this is like they know headsets because they've tried out so many of them. So they kind of already know what that curve is to give their opinion based on it, but they're doing it in a less biased way. They get the product for free. They get, and maybe they're not even paid. I don't know. Maybe that is all they get, is because that is their point of their channel, right? Is to give reviews and to give them honestly. So their audience trusts them more, and they get free product, but not in a way that influences their right. That is, and then the company itself gave away 100 free headsets. They don't get to choose who gets it and who's going to do that. But they get that stamp of, hey, these people reviewed your headset. Actually, it's not as good a quality as you think it is. Actually, or, like this or this. And there could also be, because all these people are doing it, we can collect that data and give that to our customers, right? That like, hey, out of all these people who tried this headset, they rated it this way, whereas this headset is rated differently. And start collecting that data of like it. But if you have single-sided deafness, you actually want this one. If you're listening to music, the music ones wanted this one, and the gamers wanted this one. Interesting.
So it sounds a bit like maybe it's not like it's a little bit for marketing, because if if the company was picked as the top one, they're probably going to include that in advertising. But it sounds like a lot of it is just sort of like end user testing, where we're like, hey, if you actually want real feedback on your products and not like to pay someone to figure it out, you can already do that now, and you possibly already are. But if you want this kind of feedback, then we can offer that.
Yeah, because I mean, I think the customer is starting to understand that 5-star reviews aren't 5-star reviews, right? Even on Yelp, even on Amazon. So sending it out to 100 people who are both rating it honestly, and you can have a special stamp. We don't have control over Yelp and Google, but a special stamp saying this is a third party independent study. And yeah, the people themselves, it's really hard, just like you have a Better Business Bureau stamp or that kind of thing, to say we're really good. Are you? Are you worth that price point? Are you durable? I mean, they're not obviously going to know durability, but even that can be reported later on.
And Google does actually have a format, a way that you can, if you run a rating site, say what the rating is, and then if someone Google searches and if your page happens to come up in the ranking, the rating will display where the text is. And I think it's often uses stars or something, so it's pretty visible. Yeah, I'm just trying to think if there's an alternative that doesn't have such a... It's still kind of... We're kind of fitting a round peg and a square peg in a round hole. Kind of the feeling we're trying to find a place to build sustainability.
And I think further to that point, a lot of the stuff that we've talked about so far requires an audience. And part of it is we kind of need money to get an audience, or at least to help like grow it and to get and to possibly hire somebody that TogetherTec and the projects can use to sort of figure out, hey, what could help us build audiences for TogetherTec, for Reason Score, for WikiLection, for solution raising, for all of them. And I think that's where there are a bunch of different avenues that we could use to start making money, but I think part of it is which of them already require us to either have an audience or money, and then which of them are like, oh, we could do this now.
And I guess some of the unspoken options is, having it to where people can optionally pay for access to the service. Maybe you can get deeper. I still don't like that. I don't like putting part of the feature set behind a wall. But deeper analytics when you're searching for things. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the individual people could hire people to go and do research for them, where they can describe what they want, and then then we'd hire someone to go out, look at all the products, put them in the system. That might be something. So it'd be more like they're sponsoring it to be put in the system, because that data wouldn't just go to that person. Although a lot of times it may be very personal if someone is looking for a nanny that can do sign language, right? There's not enough people that would value that in the main system. You'd still kind of put it there, but and also that would kind of bootstrap the system as well to get data in it. But yeah, and then just have a badge on the site that's we say we expect X% of your income or something, or we suggest a donation of X% of your income. And if you're paying some money, then there'd be some sort of indicator. So as you're interacting with the community or other people are seeing your reviews, your information you're putting in, there might be an indicator there. I don't really know if that would actually go anywhere though.
Wondering if one of the things we kind of alluded to it earlier on is to just brainstorm everything that could make money, whatever, sell our children, like every things that were, and then how game A, how game B they are, how complicated they are, and how much they require us to have more of an audience than we do now, right? How long do they take to make? Is there that beta version? And there might be one that pops out as, oh, this is an obvious winner, or there might be an obvious, nope, there's a reason we haven't made this yet. There's our, and but figure out what those categories are that we'd want to score, and then also put it out to the Game B community of, hey, we have the same problem again and again that we can't finance projects, that people need to be able to be paid in order to be able to fund Game B projects. We're looking to start one to make living wages and fund future projects. It needs to be profitable. That is the reason of this, right? The reason of this isn't necessarily to create Game B. That's why we're doing it. That's the why later. and including, right, how could this be gamified? How game A is it, and how could it be even more game A that we maybe can't see, right?
Yeah, so I'd almost rather say, I mean, we could pursue Adriel's ideas, but also maybe putting out to the Game B communities. Let's brainstorm products and services that we personally would pay for, and then we take a look at those and see which of those have an advantage in the Game A market because it's Game B, and maybe see if we can brainstorm with the larger group.
That's a good idea. One of the things with the essential oil thing that I'm also obsessed with is I'm working on like the idea of a video between like what an MLM essential oil company does, a for-profit one, and a cooperative one, and like what does the customer get, what does the business owner get, what does the planet get from those three? Doing something similar to that where we're all living in Game A anyway. Like you said, what would you use as a service, but also like how do we make it cooperative, right? How do we take, well, we're all using toilet paper. How do we make a hemp toilet paper that like would go to everyone in North America that's in Game B? How much would it need to be per roll? How much would there need to be? Are we willing to put it out to our family and friends, right? Like it might even be something that is not a tech project, right? That is, it's one of the things that came up during our climate change solution raising that Daniel had mentioned, is that like picking one product to make super carbon neutral, whatever, right? So hemp toilet paper seems like an obvious to me, like, but something like that, right? That is, what do you use that you want to be made better? And then which one has the highest rating, right? Like if I'm not willing to change my toilet paper, there's no point. But if, hey, Game B is going to have a toilet paper brand, would you be willing to switch over? Yes, if it was the same or less money, or to get it delivered, right? Like whatever those metrics are, but starting with something that is Game A/Game B, right? Like a toilet paper company that
I think
wipes your ass and wipes away the shit of Game A at the same time. There's a slogan
your marketing slogan there, yeah. I think one of the things that I would think would need to be a part of this is sort of the like, hey, what ideas do you have that might be able to be used, to make money to be able to pay for Game B projects? But then also, what would it need to look like in order for you to be willing, to share ideas that you think are? Because I think a lot of people, they're kind of both Game A and Game B at the same time. They're like, Game B sounds good, but also right now we exist in Game A, and also some people are liars, and some people might be, pretending to be Game B, and then they get a Game A idea and say, actually, never mind, Game A is great, and then they just switch to making money. So I think part of it is both the question of what ideas could we move forward with that would be sort of our next steps that we could feasibly do right now or soon. But then also, if you have ideas like that, what would you need to see from that organization? Like, what would it need to be structured like in order for you to participate? And that might end up, I think there's sort of at least two different sides. There's the like, just the idea, and there's also the like, actually participate and, keep like, sort of actively work on it. And then, I guess there's sort of two different versions of that. There's a like, what would it take for you to work on a project now and participate, and you wouldn't really get anything out of it unless it was successful, and you're still sort of taking all of the same risk that you would in Game A, but then possibly not getting as much of a payout, versus what could you do, what would the organization have to look like for you to participate, but also keep in mind that organization is helping to alleviate some of that risk. Like if it's able to have staff help, or if it's actually able to contribute some money towards it, then that is an obvious thing where like, oh, so that's how it's different from Game A. It's kind of like an investor, but it's a new kind of investing, sort of both of those steps, if that makes sense.
I think that is important. One of the things, like when you have a startup, especially a tech startup, it's very common that you don't get paid, because the idea you get that big payoff in the end, right? Same with the MLMs, all of it. It's like, ooh, I'm taking on all this time and risk, even though I don't think it's time and risk, to become rich one day. That there's like a collective vision, which is what Game B is, right? That is like, this is humanity's richness, right? Like this is humanity getting to be on a yacht in a mansion. It's our equivalent. We're not getting yachts and mansions, right? Like what does that future need to look like for you? That it's enough of an incentive that you put time in, right? And how little or much time is that, right? Like for solution raisings, like you get to envision a better world. It's literally an hour a week. I don't understand. I don't understand. It's not money. It's not even, but like they don't even know it's a possibility. They don't know what those things are. Matoush.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Sorry for
Hey, Matoush.
part of the very interesting conversation from the subject suggests.
Money, money, money. We're getting very game A up in here. Figuring out how to make money. Not really. We're still game B people.
So what's the idea?
We're still generating.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think we talked through a few ideas, but we thought maybe best to do a survey of Game B people, ask him what products would they be willing. I'd almost phrase it as, what products would you be willing to pay a little more for if it was a Game B company that was non-extractive? Because I think we know if we can do it for less of a price, then everyone would, in Game B, they'd be more likely to do it. And then, but also maybe ask them the question, what are some products that you think, products or services that you think that if it was done by a Game B company, it would have an edge in the Game A marketplace? That because we're not being extractive, or because, other than the fact that people in Game B would use it, like we might get some sort of edge. Like I think there's some businesses that just don't work because people want to protect their intellectual property, right?
Mm-hmm.
But since we wouldn't care so much about the intellectual property, I mean, someone could steal the idea and redo it, that maybe we can do stuff like that. So just, I guess, kind of just think through what are some market advantages that the Game B philosophy naturally has.
I think that's a good, more focused, like asking Game B what products they'd be willing to pay a little bit more for a more omni-win solution. And instead of, and then if you, because I don't think anyone needs an incentive to give that idea. I'm not telling you I want toilet paper. You might steal it, right? Like it's more, and then that other part is an important part for later for TogetherTec, right? Like if you have an amazing idea, what would get you to bring it here? It's like two different.
I guess also there might be some business areas where people would be willing to pay more, but because it's a Game B company, maybe like if there's an industry where it's traditionally done through slave labor or oppressive labor in other countries, right? Then that would be something that, I mean, already some companies are using that, but it'd be like a Tom Shoes or something like that, where, yeah, I don't know, same idea.
Mm-hmm.
So far, the sort of different aspects that I'm seeing to this conversation is what are the projects that we could do now versus later? So what sort of like a next step that we could do without needing money and resources and an audience versus like, obviously, if we have time and money and audience and people working on a project, there's different things that we could do. There's the question of what like actual idea do you have for, a company, product, service, or whatever, versus just what products would you buy if they were better in certain of these aspects? And then leading from that question is, what would the organization or products need to look like? What would be the unique aspects, either for you to feel safe contributing your idea, or that you would be more willing to spend your money as a consumer with that organization? And then the part of like, which product or service or company would get an advantage because of its Game B attributes, like being omni-win or being anti-rival risks, that sort of thing, versus just which do we think would do better because the company is sort of that Game B feel-good market positioning, like the Tom Shoes. As far as I know, that's purely sort of a people want to contribute in that way, not so much because of the way it's made. It has some innate advantage. That's sort of the four different parts to this question that I can see right now.
Mm-hmm. What product would you buy, or what service would you like to subscribe to?
Right.
I'm just thinking, what service is would be the most beneficial to game B type people? New Facebook, obviously, but
And I think one of the traps that we could really easily fall into here is the example that Jubilee gave with Mountain Equipment Co-op, where they asked their members, "Hey, what do you want?" And the members told them, and then they went and built this new fancy thing, with less slave labor and less environmental impact. And the people said, "Great, that's too expensive. I'm going to go buy it from Walmart."
ow. Okay.
And so I think part of it is, how do we avoid that? How do we actually, if we're going to go through the effort of doing the research and making the thing, which I think no matter what, anytime that we're making a product, that's going to be later, because we have to go through like the investment of, the procurement and the creation and the marketing and the actual shipping of things.
If you do well enough, you can get people to pre-order. So
True.
And that is like Matush actually used the word subscription, and I think that's a good system, right? That there's like the Dollar Shave Club and stuff to do. What kind of things in your life would you put in a subscription for that we know what you know what I mean? You're going to order detergent every month. And it doesn't mean you're committing to that for the rest of your life, but like, yes, I want laundry detergent. I want toothpaste. I want this thing. And even going out and doing more of a buyer's club where we're actually looking for what's already on the market and offering like bulk buying it and then putting it out into like, here's the top 10, right? Toothpaste, deodorant, whatever. And getting them subscription where it's like, I'm maybe going down rabbit holes, but subscription was the.
no, that's interesting doing a group buyers club. We may be too spread out for the real benefits of that to be, but maybe not. But that's interesting because we'd have a similar kind of rubric or decision making for what products to buy. Not exactly, because people have different needs, but yeah, maybe if we know that, this of all the companies, this is the least extractive, and maybe using the tool we were talking about where people give feedback, so the group would come together. I really think also using Reason Score to make that decision would be helpful, because people would put in all the evidence they know about the company, and then based on that, we come to a group decision on which company to buy the products from.
One of the other things is the expense is the delivery, right? It's like collecting the stuff, bulk buying it, and delivery. And in that, it's like, right, you get it once per month, right? Everyone gets it. Like maybe you actually go pick it up from a warehouse in Vancouver, right? Maybe that is part of what makes it cheap, or you're paying extra to get it delivered directly to your house. But like, it's that it goes to Vancouver, right? So I get my toothpaste, my deodorant, my whatever. I can pick it up from my neighborhood. That there's ways that we can do this together that don't necessarily have to look like Amazon or, that you're getting delivery all the time.
And Nick had some similar things where he was figuring out areas for people to work together in. I don't know if that could be leveraged as well.
I'll say one of the things I like about the Buyers Club is that if we're pooling money together to say like, hey, let's go buy shoes or toothpaste or whatever. There's that.
Can you mute? I think you have the vacuum or something happening in the background. So you're not talking. You mute? I'll mute you. There we go. Sorry.
No worries. One of the interesting things about a buyer's club is that if, let's say, we say, okay, let's go out and do a toothpaste subscription. That I think is an easier way to have the conversation around what would the organization or the product need to look like? What are the unique aspects? Because you aren't talking theoretical then. You're saying like, no, we have 10 options. What questions do we need to ask to be able to pick one? And then, you might end up with something like Reason Score where you say, okay, we identified these 5, attributes that we want to be able to score on. And then there's both the here's how those are scored, and then here's how the group has weighted things based on our understanding of what the group wants. We're going to pick this one. Who's still in? Because you might say like, oh, I'm interested in the idea of a buyer's club, but I just really don't agree with the attributes that we picked for toothpaste. So I'm going to skip out on this one. But at the very least, you've got those attributes and you've got some of the scoring happening, and that I think is a way better way to have that conversation than just a theoretical, hey, what would a company look like for you to want to be able to buy things from them, which is way too nebulous for, I think, people to really resonate with and pay attention to and answer.
I like the idea that was coming up because of my MLM obsession right now is like having a city sign up for, like once you have 100 people in a city, that's when it starts, right? Like that's when you can get it delivered to that city. And then, there's 5 or 6 products that you get, and you can it's based on the volunteer hours of the people going and sorting those boxes from that space, or we sort it at a central location and send it out in boxes. But that we're working to bring together like what toothpaste is out there that isn't Crest and Colgate, what detergent is out there, and working with the companies to be like, what we want is less packaging. What we want is like, it not to have sulfites and all these things in it. Working with, I think it's OmniWin. Like, I think that it's actually, and it's also something that like with what happens here with the container stores and stuff, if you can get stuff that comes in mason jars that you're returning, or it comes in less plastic, that is bulk bought, because there's always so expensive. It's like, I want a bamboo toothpick. Like that's like is $1 per toothpick. Like they're so expensive, and they have to be. Like hemp toilet paper should be what we're all using. I don't understand how it's not, but it's because any company that starts has to, go through everything we're going through. And so there's not the choice on the market. Whereas if we can find a hemp toilet paper company, be like, hey, if we have 10,000 customers, what's the price that we can offer? Not to, lowball them, but to be like, we want people using your product. It's a better product. How do we bring down this cost? Can you do it? How much hemp do we
not have them artificially bring down the cost, but how can we, by buying in bulk, reduce your cost of production and pass some of those savings back to us, so they make a slightly more profit, and we're able to make a little profit, and the customers get what we want.
There's a company in the States, and I always want to call it the Honest Company, but it's not the Honest Company. And you pay a subscription fee, like with Costco, per year, and they're creating food, cosmetic, like all the stuff that you need in a household that is environmentally friendly. Like they have their own brand and they're actually creating it, and then you're getting that stuff at cost because you're paying this subscription fee. There's something there, but we don't want to make our own products necessarily. That's a lot, but like that we're doing that same thing where you're paying a subscription fee to get this, and we're sourcing it with you and for you. And then there's that little tiny bit of a fee on top because this is, there isn't, because you were paying the subscription fee. $50.
You might be thinking of brandless.
Maybe. Yeah.
Better stuff, fewer dollars.
Sounds right.
I heard something about them. I thought they were having some trouble, but I don't.
Yeah, I saw another company that was showing me ads on Facebook a while ago. I don't think it was brandless. That doesn't sound familiar, but I think it was the same basic idea, where it was, you pay us monthly. We, are making stuff at cost and blah 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 blah.
The issue is still, how do I trust you, right?
Yeah.
Like you're still, how do I know what's in that product? How do I know whereas we can't necessarily say that, but we have the ingredients list. We're not the middleman. We're not the people making the toothpaste and therefore trying to save money on it. Like, and they might be too, because it is about giving it a cost. So like being transparent with that cost. We're like, look, the company told us it's $2. Yours is $2.20, right? Like we made it, it's whatever. It's the same price as what you would buy off the website, but you're getting it all shipped to you. So you're not paying for shipping. You're getting it all at this price, and the company gets to stay in business.
Yeah, so Brandless did shut down. They had a funding issue, but they're back open, and they're focusing on staying profitable. I think they took on too much funding, and then couldn't maintain the valuation and everything, but.
Also, like if you need to have an entire catalog of goods that you're making yourself, that is huge, especially during this time. Whereas finding people that are already doing that and bringing them customers is a different. And I think Colleen and Harris might be the people, because they have their online farmers market. There's something about that that's like, hey, how does this go together in a profitable way?
An interesting thing is that one of the things that people like in this community is local, and you lose kind of some of the centralized efficiencies when you go local. So I don't know if we could think of, it'd be interesting to work with them to see if there's anything we can think of to do for the local. Although if you're doing it on a city basis, like Jubilee suggested, then definitely local would work.
What I was thinking was like you have the local farmers market, right, with the food that's created, and you're still delivering to those to people, and so you have what they're doing in a beautiful, efficient way, creating a website people want to use that you can use between cities as a customer, but the local, and then that same organization is also getting the shipment from, like, I don't know if I need my toothpaste made locally. I might, but you know what I mean, like getting those things shipped and put in your box as well. So you're adding these subscription things onto it, and it's not, because it's open and transparent, it's not as high as a cost as going to Whole Foods and buying it, and you're not having to support Bezos, right? Like there's, and if we have a customer base of people who care about this isn't necessarily even Spuds in Vancouver, who's still an awesome company, but like, I don't really care if they succeed. Whereas if it's ours that we own together, that is something that is like, I do care if it succeeds. I want to be able to continue buying this toothpaste. We're helping the little companies, the local farmers, and who's not going to sign up for it, right? Like if it's actually if it's not as expensive as going to the farmer's market and it's COVID, it gets delivered to you.
I was thinking, if possible, with the like trying to find people in the same city, what might be like along that same route, and possibly even more, I guess, efficient, both with the finding groups of people and making it more efficient within the same city, is finding people, like starting off by targeting people in the same apartment buildings. So you can say like, hey, if we can find 5 apartment buildings in the same city, with at least 20 people per building, then things like delivery become easier. Where we're like, oh yeah, we can deliver it to you for X cost, where you're now sharing that delivery with everyone else in the building. And then you just have to go down to the lobby and pick it up. Or the delivery could actually go door to door, and that could be built into it.
And one of the things would actually be working, like, I'm thinking it's harder to find a building that happens to have a lot of people who have the same ethics in it, right, that are in, but you know what isn't, is the people who work for a specific company. So like in Vancouver, Van City, right, like the Van City headquarters be like, hey, do you want your food delivered here? And then I don't know how you do it as far as keeping it cold throughout the day so it gets to them, but whatever, that it gets, like they get it delivered to their work, they're there during the day, and it's a lot easier to find 20 people working at Van City who have these values than 20 people at a random apartment building has these values, right?
Right. That seems like a pretty good starting point. Like because I mean, I'm not sure how many of us have worked in offices, at least recently, but like it was a fairly common thing to, buy lunch together. Well, if you had a service where the whole purpose was kind of like a combination of Groupon and Uber Eats, where it was like, hey, we'll deliver it to your building. And again, if you can schedule it, it may be even better. We can say, hey, we've contacted 5 or 10 restaurants in this area. On Tuesdays, you can get 4 tacos for $4 or whatever the price ends up being. And so it sort of ends up being that like there is that innate, we're not actually building anything. We're just linking together buyers and sellers, taking a small cut. But like I would have loved that when I worked in an office.
I also just remembered we're in a pandemic and a lot of people are working in offices, but
True.
Different time period. Maybe we might go back to that.
Yeah, so that might be another point for the apartment buildings. But yeah, when we go back to offices, I think that would be, because I would have totally done that if there was some sort of like a schedule to make it easier on the restaurants to say, hey, we have a different restaurant every day of the week. Go take a look, and if at least 5 of you buy in, it's this price. And then you can even have if there's 10, it's lower. If there's 20, it's lower.
This is the product right here. I mean, finding solutions, brainstorming possibilities.
I don't know that
people don't want to pay for this though.
It's like
Yeah, it's hard to monetize.
Someone who, yeah, but still there are people who need solutions for anything, basically.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder about a Game B. Yeah, Game B thing.
TogetherTec think tank.
Management consulting, Game B. I don't know that we have a lot of experience yet.
I think that's an option once we have a couple of like successful, profitable projects under our belts. Then we can start to go to companies, or they might actually reach out to us.
I mean, we've done project raisings in the past, having people who are a little more on and being like, right, for an hour of our focus time, it's $100, right? Now are we getting paid for our time? Or are we going to get $25 an hour just TogetherTec to get $100, right? Like, what is the actual metrics? But hey, if you're just starting out, $100, because you have to be serious enough that you're willing to pay that. Whereas, the bigger ones might, I don't know, pay more, but.
Yeah. And also, if it's a company wanting to be Game B, wouldn't we provide them that advice for free? I mean, I guess if it's a nominal amount of money, then it could be kind of like, hey, we want to do this for you. We're just asking for a donation from your company.
Yeah, and it might be like sort of tiers on like if you're actually going full Game B, yeah, we'll help you for free because then theoretically we're owners too. But if you're like just trying to say how can I capitalize on this Game B sentiment while still being a Game A company, okay, depending how much you're staying Game A depends how much you would get charged.
And we're just I don't know if they're here with us, but like we're just brainstorming for them, right? Hey, we just Game B'd restaurants several times, right? So like, are we going to charge every restaurant? It's like, like you really Game B an entire industry, but if one company in that industry is like, no, I want to know how we can have that edge. Well, you can't, because the whole point is that if you're in competition and you're going to keep the other ones out, you don't get it. Like, it's like, but you're willing to pay, then you get the benefit of what comes out of it, right? If you're a restaurant and we're starting to deliver to office buildings, you get that, but so do the other restaurants. So we're helping all restaurants.
I do think that almost no matter what, the first few solutions are going to be something tech-based, so that it's just innately scalable. And whether that's like an online solution that we can sell to the world, or some sort of a tech platform that helps, some sort of a local emphasis, for it to be like truly scalable. And I think that's kind of what the first few things have to be. That's the vibe I get, is that the first few should be so that we can have some funds to pay people and to pay for our projects, but then also to pay for the other projects to make more money, because once you have money, it's easier to make money. Thanks, Game A.
Oh, we're almost at the hour. 5 more minutes. Less than 3 more minutes. Although I think winning the lottery is still, let's just keep buying lottery tickets. What do we think? That's viable, right? Go to the casino. Just assume we'll win.
And I see always I'm kind of stop thinking about it as something fitting in this particular context, but maybe not. And also, there was something in one podcast about Game B and enterprises doing the new style, the Game B style, about Game A companies not being able, being seriously disadvantaged comparing to Game B because having shareholders and there were reasons why a proper Game B company should be much better and more efficient and generally be better than its Game A counterpart. That's on one hand, and on the other hand, Game A has a very serious advantage in a form of not having to care about environment, for example, or using slave labor as they see fit for making the product. So I don't know. Is it that it should, by default, Game B be win the competition, or is Game B disadvantaged right from the start?
It's interesting because that is sort of the pros and cons of each. Mm-hmm. But I think also that Game A advantage, if we add a layer of visibility through things like Reason Score and Conferati, mm-hmm. that starts to dissolve, because that is one of the things that I'm seeing is people do care. It's just not easy to tell. Like if a company has a really bad environmental impact, they don't broadcast that, and when it comes out, they usually either have to change it or they get trounced. Like they get crushed in the news and people stop buying from them, and then they have to make a big spectacle of, we changed and we improved this, or they sink.
Well, concealing the scenes is a very big part of the market, right?
Yeah. Which
I think, Matush, what you touched on is that like Game A companies have shareholders that they have to be profitable for.
Yes.
And good and bad that comes with that. we have stakeholders that the more they're aware they're a stakeholder, the more they're actually involved and aware of it. They trust us more. They care about us succeeding because they want to be able to keep using the product or service, whatever it is we're using. And every kind of innovation goes to everyone. And so like game B has a big advantage, even in game A, but people have to kind of become aware. So what Adriel, like as these other things become more transparent, as we start to, that one starts to diminish and game B starts to take off. I mean, this is when a year ago before I found game B, when I was talking about dismantling capitalism, like this was, it's like, we can do this from the inside. This is actually like these omni-win solutions in and of themselves, having stakeholders with a stake in it versus shareholders who only care about profit. Which one is the customer going to pick? Which one is like the only ones who profit in game A are the shareholders and the owners. And even then you don't, because you're still a stakeholder in everything else. And so, yeah, that there's an advantage. Anyone else? Closing thoughts?
Nothing comes to mind.
All right, we're back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time for our roundtable. We share what our projects are and what we've done with them and what we're going to do in the next week. All right, thank you, everybody.